The 20-hour flight from Singapore to Chicago, with a stop in Taipei, was hardly better than economy class, even on my birthday. The tough meeting with the head of international stocks didn't bother me as much as what awaited me at home. We landed around 8:30 a.m., and I grabbed a shuttle to the Sheraton Suites Hotel. I had pre-booked the room, so check-in was smooth. After dropping my bags, I hit the gym for an hour, followed by a long hot shower and a freezing cold rinse to wake myself up. Despite the cold April air in Chicago, I braved the cold water until my teeth were chattering, then warmed up again before heading downstairs for an American breakfast I hadn't had in months. I devoured pancakes, eggs, bacon, sausage, and 4 cups of coffee, then headed to my 10:30 a.m. meeting at J.P. Morgan. After a short wait, Mark Turner, VP of International Stock, and our lawyer David Fisher walked in. Their expressions said it all. I was about to be fired. "Ethan," Mark started without a handshake, motioning for me to sit. "What happened in Singapore? You approved a $300 million stock purchase with no solid data." "It's all in my report," I responded. "The CEO and team are experienced. The project's been in development for 50 years, with Deloitte and KPMG verifying everything." "Then why has the stock dropped?" Mark snapped. "It went public at $17, and now it's down to $9.55. And you bought more?" "Yes, because it will rebound. When it hits $25, we'll profit massively." Mark shook his head. "We own 25% of a failing company. Competitors are short-selling to sink it. It's a disaster." "It's all about confidence," I insisted. "We need to stand firm." "Your report is just wishful thinking," Mark said coldly. "The board agrees. You're out." David offered me a severance package, 3 months' salary, 30 days of vacation, and my stock options cashed out, totaling $800,000. By 2 a.m., I had signed all the papers and was escorted out. Standing on the sidewalk with an empty briefcase, I felt like collapsing. I barely made it back to the hotel and poured myself a whiskey with 7-Up, which felt like a necessary evil at that point. At 42, too young to retire but unsure how to start over, I knew I needed to find a way forward. The next morning, I bought a laptop and transferred $50,000 from savings, ready to start fresh. I ordered a hamburger and beer from room service while ignoring my phone, which had been off for 36 hours. Exhausted, I drifted off into sleep. When I woke up the next morning, I finally checked my phone. It was flooded with messages. "Help, Dad. Mom is losing it," from Liam and Sophia. "What's going on with Anna?" from my dad. Birthday wishes from Anna's parents, my kids, and Team Singapore. But nothing from Anna. It was like I didn't exist. I flew to Springfield and arrived home to a disaster. The living room was trashed. Games, soda cans, and dirty plates everywhere. The kitchen sink was clogged, the dishwasher full, and trash overflowing. The laundry room was a disaster. Then I noticed 2 empty wine bottles with different lipstick stains in the living room, which sent up a red flag. I spent 3 hours cleaning and organizing the place. Our bedroom needed fresh sheets, and the air was stale. The kids' rooms were a mess, but at least they weren't as bad as the rest of the house. Once everything was in order, I went to my office to check the aquaculture stock. It had dropped to $9.37. I had to decide if I had the guts to get back into the market. I called my dad, and we talked about Anna. He said she had seemed sad and distant lately, almost like she was falling apart, but for no clear reason. I checked our bank transactions and home phone messages, but found nothing unusual. After folding some laundry, I headed to the store. I needed to pick up some ingredients to make Thai green curry and jasmine rice for dinner. I started dinner by boiling rice with coconut milk, ginger, and water. I stir-fried chicken strips with zucchini, eggplant, lemongrass, garlic, basil, and cilantro, then added coconut milk, green curry paste, lime juice, fish sauce, and a bit of sugar. After garnishing with spring onions and basil, I set the table and poured myself a beer. Anna arrived, and the kids ran inside, thrilled to see me. Sophia hugged me, tears in her eyes, while Liam, more reserved, embraced me too. Anna stood back, watching us with a distant expression before offering a lukewarm kiss. "Welcome home, Ethan," she said with little enthusiasm. "What's that smell?" "Thai green curry," I replied. The kids were curious and excited. It smells great, Liam said. Anna sent them to clean up for dinner, then turned to me, trying to sound casual. You look tired. Why are you back so soon? I got fired, I admitted. She blushed, fumbling for words, looking distant. We'll figure it out, she mumbled. There was a coldness between us, like she was more of a stranger than my wife. At dinner, we sat together for the first time in months. I poured wine for Anna and myself, while the kids had their favorite drinks. I told stories from Singapore about team-building exercises like dragon boat races and combat archery. After dinner, Liam and Sophia surprised me with a wrapped present for my birthday. Anna, clearly embarrassed, teared up, saying, "Oh my God, Ethan, I'm so sorry. I forgot." I resisted bringing up the expensive diamond earrings I had gotten her for her birthday. You don't need to get me anything, I said, focusing on the kids. Just being home with you all is enough. The kids hugged me, saying, "We love you, Daddy." That moment, despite everything, felt good. We talked at the table for over an hour, but eventually, the kids want to do their homework. While Anna and I cleaned up, I asked, "What's going on with you, Anna? You're not yourself." She hesitated, then admitted, "I don't know. I feel lost, Ethan. You've been gone so much, and this last time was too long. We're hardly living the same life anymore." Tears welled up in her eyes. She resisted at first, but eventually, she let me hold her as she cried softly. She wasn't wrong. My job had taken me away for years. We had agreed to make sacrifices for early retirement, but I could see how it had broken her down. Anna suggested I spend more time with the kids, so I helped Sophia with her homework, did the same with Liam, and then tucked Sophia into bed. Later, Liam pulled me aside and whispered, "Mom's not okay, Dad. She's been crying a lot and isn't doing much around the house. I think she's having a breakdown." His eyes were full of worry. "Please fix it, Dad." I nodded, but inside, I felt lost. As I went downstairs, I overheard Anna on the phone. She ended the call abruptly when she saw me. "Who was that?" I asked. "One of the girls from work," she replied, defensive. Her tone, though, made me suspicious. Exhausted, I let it go and checked the Singapore Stock Exchange. The stock had risen slightly, but it was hardly a relief. That night, after Anna finished in the bathroom, I joined her in bed. When I reached for her, she tensed but then asked, "Just hold me." I wrapped my arms around her, but something felt wrong, deeply wrong. Had our long separation caused this? Was she falling out of love? Or was there something more going on? My mind wouldn't stop turning, and I finally fell into an uneasy sleep. I woke up at 4:30 a.m., feeling sick and exhausted. After a morning run, I returned home to find Anna gone, leaving a note asking me to feed the kids and take them to school. I checked my bank account. The money from J.P. Morgan had cleared, so I transferred it to my offshore account. Meanwhile, the stock was dropping again, now at $8.99. I felt torn between fixing my marriage and securing my financial future. Could I even manage both? I spent time with Liam and Sophia, asking them about their lives while I was away. They mentioned spending time with Anna's boss, Robert Barnes, and his daughter, Rachel, minigolf, movies, and more. Liam quickly defended the time spent with them, saying it felt like one big happy family. I forced a smile, even though it unsettled me. Trying to lighten the mood, I proposed a summer vacation, and the kids lit up with excitement. I hugged them before driving them to school. Later, I called Michael Harris, my old mentor, to discuss my situation. Michael, still a registered broker, agreed to review the CA prospectus I had sent him. After running errands, I saw Anna and Rachel Barnes leaving St. John's Hospital. They looked shaken and deeply connected in a way that made my stomach drop. Whatever was going on between them, it wasn't just work-related. I couldn't shake the feeling that Anna or Rachel was either sick or grieving. Seeing them leave the hospital unsettled me, but I had to move on with my day. At my first meeting, Peter Simmons said he would discuss the CA investment with his group. At my second meeting, Daniel Cohen quickly agreed to invest $10 million, which was a relief. Things were starting to move. After the paperwork, Michael called, confirming he had lined up investors. We agreed on a commission structure that worked for both of us. Then I spoke to my dad, who decided to invest $100,000. When I told him about Anna's odd behavior, he suggested it seemed like someone mourning a loss. We ruled out close family, and he gave me a contact for a private investigator they'd once used. That evening, I called Walter Johnson, a PI with a slow drawl but a sharp mind. He needed a $5,000 retainer, which I sent him without delay. He promised to start the next day. I also called my Singapore contacts and reviewed the risk assessment for CA again. Everything checked out: rational numbers, strong management, and a promising early-stage project. The Singapore exchange was about to open, and I was ready. Liam and Sophia got home late from practice, and I caught up with them, though I explained I had some important work later. Anna arrived looking tired, but more focused than usual. "I brought Chinese food," she said, offering a quick kiss on my cheek. Her tone was flat, and she didn't ask how my day had been. "Are you working tonight?" she asked. "Yeah, I've got some things to take care of," I replied. She handed me a small gift-wrapped box. "Happy birthday, Ethan," she said in a detached tone. Inside was a bottle of Hugo Boss aftershave. I thanked her, but the gesture felt like an afterthought. She kissed me briefly, and we sat down to eat together. The kids were full of energy, talking about their day. Anna mentioned her boss, Robert Barnes, was converting his house into a shelter for troubled teens, something his late wife had started before she passed. I hadn't expected this from him, considering his high society image. "Why now?" I asked, curious. "The opportunity came up," Anna said, her tone growing cold again. "That's a great idea," I said, trying to stay positive. "Springfield could use something like that." She smiled faintly, but it didn't feel genuine. After dinner, I headed to my office to prepare for the Singapore market to open. As I sat there, I couldn't stop thinking about my marriage. Anna and I had once been so connected. In the past, we always planned something special for when I returned from work trips, but this time, nothing. No excitement, no plans. It felt like there was a wall between us. It made me angry. In Singapore, I had women approach me all the time, but I turned them down. I was committed to Anna, but now, I started to wonder if she had already checked out of our marriage while I was away. The Singapore market opened, and CA stock was trading at $8.49. I cautiously began buying shares, expecting the price to stabilize. Instead, it kept dropping, eventually falling to $5.61. I suspected my old company was dumping shares, trying to drive the price down. Still, I kept buying, confident the stock would rebound. By the time I finished, we owned over 10% of the company, which gave us enough influence to appoint someone to the board. I called Michael and we celebrated over whiskey, 18-year-old JP Weisers for me, and a 10-year-old Boo Light bourbon for him. As other investors followed our lead, the stock climbed back to $8.72, leaving short sellers stranded. It was nearly 2 a.m. by the time I logged off, exhausted. I took some melatonin and finally passed out. The next morning, I woke up late. Liam and Sophia were finishing breakfast, and Anna was on the phone, saying, "Time is of the essence." She ended the call when she saw me and poured me a cup of coffee. "You must have been up late," she said, shrugging. "Yeah," I nodded. "Did the trade go well?" she asked. "It's early, we'll see," I replied, not sharing my worries about CA. "Okay," she said, kissing my cheek before calling the kids to leave for school. They shouted, "Love you, Daddy," as they left. I poured another cup of coffee and headed to my office. The CA stock had closed at $10.14 after a late rally, which was a relief. I spent the morning making calls and sending emails to stabilize the situation further. But my thoughts kept drifting back to Anna. Curiosity got the better of me, so I checked Robert Barnes's real estate website. It highlighted his new social program, New Horizons House, for troubled teens. His Facebook page was full of vacation photos, cars, and a recent corporate event. One photo caught my eye. Anna was standing next to him, holding his hand, looking directly at him instead of the camera. It wasn't definitive proof of anything, but it raised alarm bells. Anna's own Facebook had mostly old family photos, with little recent activity. I stared at the screen, feeling a knot in my stomach. Something wasn't right, and I knew I had to get to the bottom of it. Rachel's Facebook had plenty of pictures of her and Anna over the years, some with Robert too, but nothing inappropriate. Her recent posts were cryptic, mostly about life and prayers. I felt the need to push Walter Johnson, my investigator, to speed things up, but he reminded me that it would take time. I called my father, and he urged me not to jump to conclusions. Let the experts handle it, he said. But patience wasn't my strong suit. I was torn between trying to fix my marriage, risking even more heartache if I was being played, or doing nothing and regretting it later. I called a lawyer, who advised that it was usually better to attempt to fix things rather than go through a messy divorce. Still, I had one more idea. I reached out to Ben, a former colleague of Anna's, someone who owed me a favor. We met for lunch at Red Robin, and after some small talk, I got to the point. So, you're fishing for information, Ethan? Ben chuckled. Yeah, I nodded, trying to keep it light. I need to understand what's going on at MRE. Something's been bugging me. Ben's expression turned serious. Things changed after Tony lost his wife to cancer. He was a mess for a while, but Rachel took over, and he found his way back. Your wife? She became close to him, often referred to as his office wife. I gestured for him to keep going, my throat tightening. I didn't see anything inappropriate, but office gossip can be brutal. Tony, Rachel, and Anna spent a lot of time together. But you weren't home much, were you? I shrugged, feeling exposed. As Ben was about to leave, he paused. Did you hear the rumor? Tony's got cancer. That's why Rachel's been stepping up more. After saying goodbye, I called St. John's Hospital and asked for Robert Barnes's room. Sure enough, he was in the oncology ward. My head was spinning as I paid for lunch and drove home, thoughts racing. That evening, I went outside with some whiskey and a charcuterie board. Anna joined me with a glass of wine, her mood serious. Can we talk, Ethan? She asked, her eyes studying me closely. Shoot, I replied, expecting the worst. You went on the MRE website, didn't you? She accused. So what if I did? I responded. And I'm guessing you've checked Facebook and everything else too, she said, glaring at me, challenging me to deny it. Why does it matter, Anna? Social media isn't private. I laughed sarcastically, and she flushed red with anger. Rachel said you looked at her Instagram, Anna snapped. What are you looking for? I blew a puff of smoke in her direction, knowing how much she hated it. What do you think I found? She spilled some wine on her blouse, flustered. Please stop, Ethan, she said, her voice trembling as tears welled up in her eyes. Normally, I would have hugged her, but not this time. Why are you crying, Anna? I asked coldly. Because you're upsetting me with all this suspicion, she shouted, but I just let out more smoke. She grew louder, demanding answers. Who are you? I'm wondering the same thing about you, I said, stepping back. She gasped and ran into the house. I didn't follow. Instead, I finished my whiskey and went to my office. CA's stock was climbing to $11.92, and Michael and I agreed it was part of a longer trend, not just a spike. The only stock showing any real upward movement was CA, and even JP Morgan had offloaded half of theirs at a rock-bottom price. My old boss, Mark Turner, suggested holding the rest. We shared a laugh when he hinted that JP Morgan might want to rehire me. That night, I slept on the couch in my office. The next morning, I saw that CA had closed at $13, and the trend was still strong. Our investors had doubled their money, and if it hit $25, we'd be looking at a 300% profit. I made breakfast for the kids and ignored Anna all morning. After dropping them off at school, I hit the gym, then stopped by IHOP for a late breakfast. Later, I had a long meeting with Michael to discuss the possibility of starting our own brokerage with offices in Springfield and Chicago. He would work on the structure and equity, while I would handle the market plan. I was deep into drafting the plan when Anna walked in alone. I left Sophia and Liam at the Beckers for the night, she said, pouring me a bourbon and herself a glass of wine. We need to talk. I sat back, waiting for her to start. I don't know what you think I've been doing while you've been away, Ethan. I haven't thought about it yet, I said flatly. Well, you're being very disrespectful and ugly to me, she said, her voice wavering. Is that how you feel? Disrespectful? I raised an eyebrow. She nodded, then sighed. You're not home anymore. We're like strangers. I couldn't help but scoff. Strangers? After 17 years of marriage, just because I've been away for 4 months. All the Skypes, the texts, the phone calls, none of it mattered, she said, wiping away tears. There's been so much pressure on me here, and you were so far away. She took a deep breath and said, but you're still my husband, and I'm your wife. That's all that matters. Without another word, she stood up and walked away. I sat there, sipping my bourbon, wondering if she had lost her mind. I heard her on the phone later, then the sound of water running as she prepared a bath. After some time, she came downstairs wearing a gray dress, black heels, and a string of pearls I'd bought her years ago. Go take a shower and get dressed, she said, her tone softer now. I'll make a reservation at Chesapeake Seafood Restaurant. I got ready in 15 minutes, ignoring my suspicion that Anna had been on the phone again. At the restaurant, she ordered a gin and tonic, and I went with a Singapore gin sling. We talked about the kids over Chardonnay and appetizers. She seemed completely unconcerned about me losing my job. You're one of the smartest people I know, Ethan, she said with a smile. You'll find something fast. She had no idea that our future rested on CA's success. Still, the evening got better as we discussed friends, parents, and everyday things. When the main courses arrived, I had the captain's platter, and she went for the lobster. We shared some wine, and on the surface, everything seemed fine. If she was having an affair, she hid it well. After dinner, we went home, and I fell asleep wondering what was really going on. I woke up to the smell of coffee and bacon. Anna was making breakfast, scrambled eggs, bacon, and English muffins. We ate together, chatting about chores around the house. After breakfast, she left to pick up Liam and Sophia. I was in the backyard when my phone rang. It was Walter Johnson. Can you talk? He asked, and my heart sank. We arranged to meet at a downtown coffee shop. I cleaned up and drove there, finding him already waiting. He didn't look like the detectives you see on TV. He was a small man, maybe 5 feet 7 inches, thin, gray-haired, and balding, wearing an old sports jacket and Walmart shoes. But his high-end phone and firm handshake told me he was sharp. Mr. Walker, we didn't catch your wife in any hotels or secret meetings, he started, raising a hand to stop me from interrupting. But we have solid evidence that she's been having an affair with her boss, Robert Barnes, for at least 2 years. It's an open secret at the office. Even his daughter Rachel knows and helps cover for them. Your wife often left the kids with friends to spend weekends with him while you were away. His words hit me like a punch in the gut. My hands gripped the table as my pulse quickened. Hearing it confirmed by a stranger was shattering. Walter continued, but I could barely hear him. Barnes has aggressive pancreatic cancer. He's only got a few months left. What? I asked, struggling to process the information. He's undergoing treatment, but it's not working. His cancer has metastasized. This explained Anna's strange behavior. She was mourning the man she loved, knowing he didn't have much time left. I shared my thoughts with Walter, needing someone to listen. Cheaters often try to downplay their actions by saying it's just physical, Walter said, but that's rarely the case. Long-term affairs are emotional. They share experiences, hopes, and dreams. They create a separate world. I was devastated. Anna had been giving her heart to another man, enjoying the highs of their affair while leaving me with the burdens of daily life. We talked a bit more, then agreed to pause the investigation while I processed everything. As I sat there alone, I realized something undeniable. My marriage was over. The idea of staying together for the kids didn't make sense anymore. Many children grow up in separated families, and mine would be no different. I sipped my coffee, feeling a deep, painful ache inside. Anna and Barnes would pay for this, but I needed to keep my emotions in check. Anger and hurt wouldn't help me now. I thought back to my work in the Far East, where old-school businessmen saw life in generational terms, much like Southern Europeans. When families went to war, there was no peace until one side was destroyed. But I wasn't in the mafia, and I had no powerful allies. I was just an ordinary man, living an ordinary life. I ordered another cup of coffee and thought about how to handle Barnes. As for Anna, my plan was simple: take everything she valued. First, I had to deal with Barnes. He wasn't married to me, but he had disrespected my marriage. My anger surged. In my job, psychological evaluations revealed that I was risk-averse, but stubborn to the point of intransigence. That stubbornness was fueling me now. I wouldn't back down, no matter the cost. An idea began to take shape. I called Walter and asked him to dig into the troubled women the Barnes had helped through their charity work. It felt like another fishing expedition, but I knew I needed to think big. Back in 2014, during a trip to Kenya, I had joined a local team for deep-sea fishing. The lesson was clear. To catch a marlin, you start with small bait. That strategy gave me the foundation for my plan. I drove home, did some breathing exercises to calm down, and tried to act normal. Anna wasn't home yet, so I finished up a few tasks. Later, she returned with Liam and Sophia, and we grilled steaks, made coleslaw, and warmed up baguettes. I played the role of loving father and husband all day, but inside, I felt like a fool. Cynical Ethan decided that Anna was doing damage control now that her lover was dying. I realized I was her backup plan. My time with Liam and Sophia felt genuine, but with Anna, it was like I was in a bad movie. Cynical Ethan kept reminding me to keep this in mind for the divorce and any future relationships. The next few days felt surreal, living a lie, playing a part, but watching myself from the outside. On the bright side, Michael and I finalized the setup of our new trading organization, registered it in Singapore, and transferred the CA portfolio. CA had risen to $16.33, more than doubling our investment, and we were looking at an even bigger return soon. Given how quickly I slipped into my cold, calculated persona, I found myself growing paranoid. I added security measures to my devices, fingerprint access, encrypted files, and passwords. I deleted all emails that weren't from Michael, uploaded essential files to the cloud, and wiped my phone before re-uploading necessary data. I even started researching new stocks and contacted potential investors from JP Morgan, confident that my layoff had voided my non-compete clause. On Thursday, Walter delivered what I had been waiting for. A flash drive full of information on 14 women the Barnes had helped. We met at a different coffee shop due to my growing paranoia. The flash drive had bios, photos, and some updates. 5 of the women still lived nearby. One of them, Jasmine, now worked as an escort. I bought a burner phone, called her, and arranged a meeting at a motel. Jasmine was small, thin, and heavily tattooed. "Show me the money," she said as soon as she walked in. I placed $200 on the bed. "How do you feel about making $1,000? I asked. She initially refused, but when I clarified that I only wanted information, she agreed to talk. Jasmine shared her story, how she left home after school, ended up on the streets, and began selling herself to survive. After a traumatic experience, she was taken to the hospital and then to Mrs. Barnes's home, where she stayed for 6 months. She eventually left, bored by the strict rules. "Did anyone mistreat you while you were there?" I asked. She hesitated. "How much?" she countered. I offered $5,000, but she skillfully negotiated up to $20,000, claiming she needed it to start fresh with her daughter. I promised her a job in Chicago if everything worked out. She looked at me with both hope and fear. "For real?" she asked. I reassured her, and we agreed on a plan. We exchanged numbers, with her saving mine under the name Jerry. Phase 1 was complete. Back at home, I kept up my facade. Anna seemed oblivious, too focused on her work with the Barnes Legacy project to notice anything. We cooked and ate together, like old times. One morning, over breakfast, she mentioned that she'd be busy with New Horizons House, and the grand opening was on Monday at 10 a.m. I already knew this from the company's website and social media, but I acted interested. "They're stopping Tony's chemo so he can be well enough to attend," she said, her voice cracking slightly. "It's going to be a life-changing moment. Not if I could help it." The divorce papers were ready, just waiting for my go-ahead to file. Illinois was a no-fault state, so it would all come down to irreconcilable differences. That Friday started with good news. CA stock had reached its issue price and was rising. I listened to the radio at 9:30 a.m., where Rachel was promoting New Horizons House, praising its mission and calling for donations. Then, a shaky, tearful caller interrupted the smooth interview. "Please don't believe that the house helped anyone," she sobbed. "It let Mr. Barnes exploit women. I'm a strumpet now, thanks to your precious daddy. Rachel denied it angrily, defending her father. But the caller wasn't done. He did, more than once. My name is Jasmine, and your father ruined me. The connection cut off abruptly, and the station went to a commercial break. When they returned, the host was visibly shaken, unsure whether to continue the original interview or address the bombshell accusation. Rachel tried to brush it off, but the phone lines lit up with reactions. Some listeners supported Jasmine, while others dismissed her as just trying to make money. Then another woman, Maria, called in, claiming Robert Barnes had done the same to her. The mood in the studio grew darker. Another caller, a married woman with children, sobbed as she described how Barnes had pressured her into doing things she couldn't refuse. Her call ended abruptly, leaving a stunned silence before the host, his voice quivering, could continue. What started as a routine radio spot turned into a scandalous mess, and the story spiraled out of control. The public reaction was a mix of outrage and disbelief, turning a low-interest story into a full-blown emotional storm. I called Sarah, an old high school friend who worked at the local paper and did radio news for 2 stations. "Did you hear what's happening on WMA and WTX?" I asked. She had. I told Vicky I was concerned because Anna worked for MRE on the New Horizons project. She wasn't sure but promised to look into it, mentioning that if the allegations were true, it would be the biggest scandal Springfield had seen in 2 generations. By lunchtime, the story quieted on the air, but social media and Twitter exploded. Initially, opinions were split, but soon it turned into a full-blown witch hunt against Barnes. Thousands of women shared their stories of mistreatment, some detailed, some just, "me too," and some graphic. The story went viral globally. I was overwhelmed, my head pounding. I took Tylenol, but it didn't help. Feeling dirty, I took a long shower and broke down crying harder than I had since my mother passed. I realized I had unleashed a storm that was now out of control. Nietzsche's warning about fighting monsters felt all too real. I could only hold on and hope for the best. I picked up Liam and Sophia, made chicken stir-fry for dinner, and waited for Anna. She didn't come home, and her phone was off. We ate and played a board game, trying to keep things normal. Anna finally walked in around 10 p.m., looking devastated. "You heard?" she asked, sinking into a chair. "All the awful things people are saying about Tony." I handed her a brandy and replied evenly, "Yeah, sounds like your boss is a predator. Where there's smoke, there's fire." "No, Ethan," she protested, shaking her head. "He's a good man. He would never do anything like this." It was time for phase 2. "Anna, are you sure? You don't really know him." "You don't know him either," she snapped, but her voice wavered. I pressed on. "We're husband and wife. No secrets between us. You know what I'm capable of, and I know you. But Barnes? You might know him as your boss, but do you really know who he is?" Her expression shifted, conflicting thoughts clearly playing across her face. "No," she said slowly, "he's a good man. He wouldn't." "How do you know?" I challenged. "He's just your boss. He could be hiding a million secrets. Honestly, he always struck me as someone you wouldn't leave alone with your wife or daughters." She paled. "No, never," she stammered. "How can you even ask that?" "Because you're a pretty woman, Anna," I said bluntly. "If what they're saying is true, he's clearly a man with no morals." Her composure shattered, and she burst into tears, staring into her glass of brandy. She downed it and went upstairs to say goodnight to Liam and Sophia. The shower ran for a long time before she returned to bed, thinking I was asleep. She was talking to someone, probably Rachel, mentioning nightmares and how this scandal wouldn't go away. Then I heard her second call. "Hi, Tony," she whispered. I caught bits and pieces, her reassurance that it was all a misunderstanding, that it would blow over. Then I heard the words that crushed me, "I love you too." The microwave beeped as she probably grabbed a snack, and by the time she joined me, I pretended to be asleep. Saturday morning, I woke up first, made breakfast, and took Liam and Sophia to their sports practice. At home, Vicky called me, updating me that 4 women had come forward, and her sources said the mayor's office and local organizations were distancing themselves from MRE. By mid-morning, the Attorney General announced a full investigation into Barnes. I talked to Michael about business and my father about my marriage. Dad agreed that my marriage was irreparably broken, but reassured me that Liam and Sophia would cope, like many kids do. Later, I called Anna. Where are you? Rachel, the company lawyers, and I are working on these lawsuits, she said, her voice tense. Are you sure you should be involved? I asked, genuinely concerned. The fallout could be huge. She resisted, as I expected. That weekend, MRE's show attendance dropped by over 80%, and by Monday, the phones were ringing with cancellations. The grand opening of New Horizons was postponed indefinitely. On Monday, another woman came forward, a well-known member of the community married to a wealthy businessman. She accused Barnes of assaulting her twice during her stay at New Horizons. She left her lawyer's contact info for a potential class action lawsuit. By the end of the week, 5 key things had happened. First, Barnes was interviewed by the district attorney at the hospital, and afterward, his health worsened. Second, 3 of the women testified to the police about incidents from 5 years ago. Third, MRE was forced to shut down due to the media storm. Fourth, CA stock soared past $24, and I began selling shares, recouping our initial investment while keeping 2/3 of our holdings. Fifth, my dad took Liam and Sophia for the weekend, giving me some time alone. To celebrate, I bought a 2012 vintage bottle of Uve Clicquot. When I got home, I noticed an MRE-branded BMW X5 parked next to Anna's Lexus. Inside, Anna was crying, with Rachel sitting next to her, trying to comfort her. Ladies, I greeted them, grabbing 3 champagne flutes from the kitchen. I popped the cork and filled each glass. They stared at me, shocked and confused. Salute, I toasted, then drank half the glass in one go and burped loudly. Then the shouting began. Anna, you're divorcing me. I thought we were a family. The divorce papers lay open on the coffee table. Rachel stared at them in shock. Ethan, don't you care about your wife? Don't you love her? She pleaded. Have a drink, Anna, I said coldly, pouring myself another glass. We're celebrating the end of an era. I downed the champagne and reached for the bottle. Rachel looked at me, horrified. How could you do this? First of all, I could and I did, I said, leaning back. Second, I stopped caring the moment she became your father's mistress. I knocked over my glass, half laughing. Here's to your father's legacy, Rachel. I hope he lives long enough to stand trial so the world knows what kind of man he really is. Rachel turned pale and collapsed into the chair. I turned to Anna. Get yourself a lawyer. The kids will stay with my father until custody is decided. Anna's eyes widened, fear taking over as she saw a side of me she'd never witnessed. Rachel dropped her champagne glass, spilling the drink. They both stared at me like I was a madman ready to snap. Care for more champagne? I asked, pouring myself another drink. Anna tried to justify her actions, but couldn't meet my gaze. I understand, I said with a humorless laugh. And how do you manage now? Rachel jumped in again. How many women did you sleep with while you were away, Ethan? Men always want their wives to be saints, while they do whatever they want. Don't assume all men are like your father, I shot back, my voice sharp. Just because he destroyed lives doesn't mean the rest of us stoop that low. I leaned closer, my eyes cold. Your father is a predator, a criminal, a pig. He might die before he goes to prison, but his reputation will be ruined, his project will collapse, and MRE will go bankrupt. You'll have to change your name and disappear. Rachel trembled, tears streaming down her face. For a moment, I wished she were a man so I could unleash my full rage. You probably helped lure those women, like Ghislaine Maxwell did for Epstein, I added. Her face contorted in horror. No, that's a lie. My father's a good man. I turned back to Anna. You have 2 hours to pack and leave. If you're still here when I get back, I'll call the press and let them know about your involvement. Go to hell, she spat. I'll move out, but I'll get a lawyer and we'll see who gets what. 2 hours, I repeated coldly. I drove off, adrenaline racing through my veins. A few blocks away, the rush caught up with me, and I had to pull over, gasping for breath. After 15 minutes of shaking, I regained control and called my father. I told him Anna was leaving and asked him to keep Liam and Sophia with him. Anna could visit, but not alone with them. After talking with Dad, I drove around aimlessly, refueling the car before heading home. By the time I returned, it was nearly 10 p.m. The house felt like a ghost of its former self, filled with the echoes of happier times. The silence was suffocating, and sleep was impossible. Socrates once said that an unexamined life isn't worth living, but I couldn't bear to examine mine too closely right now. I knew things had spiraled too far, and that I had lost control. I feared what would happen if this mess went to court, so I decided to get Jasmine out of town to sever my direct connection to her. The next morning, I felt as tired as when I went to bed. After my usual routine, I had breakfast downtown and called the kids. They were fine, though Liam could sense something was wrong. Over coffee, I reached out to Jasmine. "Did I deliver as promised?" she asked. "You did," I confirmed. We arranged her flight to Chicago for the next day. I transferred $25,000 from my offshore account to one of Michael's, then into her new bank account. Jasmine had a fresh start waiting for her as a property management assistant, a job set up by one of Michael's contacts. I was finishing my second cup of coffee when Sarah called. 3 women have filed lawsuits against Barnes, seeking damages, she informed me. The papers would be served Monday. We talked for a while about how the story had unfolded so quickly, and while she wasn't shocked, she said the timing had caught the news team off guard. Jasmine's bravery had spurred others to come forward, much like the Harvey Weinstein case. I spent the rest of Saturday with Liam and Sophia, and it was time for the hardest conversation. I told them that Anna and I were divorcing because she had been having an affair with her boss, Robert Barnes. Sophia didn't understand, but Liam did. "She slept with Mr. Barnes, Dad?" Liam asked, his voice steady. I nodded, my heart heavy. "Yeah, they've been together for a while." Sophia cried, clinging to me, while Liam remained stoic. We spent the afternoon at the golf course with my dad, hitting a few buckets of balls. Liam and Sophia were naturals, swinging with ease using my old clubs. Afterward, we had dinner at a Greek restaurant before heading home. That night, the house felt even lonelier, and I barely slept. On Sunday, Anna's parents called, hoping for reconciliation, for the sake of the kids. "How can I reconcile with a woman who's been having an affair for years?" I asked, "especially with a man like Barnes." They sighed, disappointed but understanding. I assured them the courts would sort things out. They were left with a shattered image of their daughter, just as I had been. Life moved on, slowly and painfully. Liam and Sophia moved back in with me, and my father stepped in to help with everything. Business was gaining momentum as Michael and I received more positive feedback. Sarah told me a 4th woman had joined the lawsuit, though curiously, not Jasmine. It struck me as odd, but I didn't press. I had a meeting scheduled with Anna's lawyers to discuss property division and braced myself for another battle. I had set up investment accounts for Liam and Sophia's education, protected from our combined assets. My last paycheck and JP Morgan payments went straight into my offshore account. Anna's lawyer suspected a golden handshake, but didn't know how much. It was only a matter of time before they subpoenaed HR documents. I offered Anna nothing, knowing she had a decent job. She argued there should be at least $250,000 in cash and near-cash assets, but I claimed it was all lost on bad stocks. "Take the deal, Anna, or I'll fight until you're broke. I'll cripple you financially," I warned. "Why are you being such an idiot?" she shot back. "I deserve half of what's left. Go ask your second husband for money. You had more of a marriage with him than with me. But hurry, he may not have any left after the lawsuits." The divorce dragged on for months. Anna's stance wavered. Sometimes she wanted reconciliation, other times she threatened to take me to the cleaners. At one point, her lawyer promised she'd get back in the house immediately. I grinned. "Careful, Anna, or I'll expose your complicity in this mess." She turned pale. "Try it and see what happens," she threatened. As I left the lawyer's office, I noticed Rachel glaring at me. I smiled at her, like you would at The Walking Dead. Her smile faltered. "You should have stayed out of this, Rachel. You reap what you sow." 2 days later, Jasmine was $5,000 richer, and social media was on fire with revelations about Rachel Barnes helping her father exploit women. The DA's office was criticized for not arresting Robert Barnes or taking action against Rachel. During a press briefing, They claimed the investigation was still in its early stages, but the media didn't hold back. Public anger, still raw from the Ghislaine Maxwell and Jeffrey Epstein cases, quickly turned on Rachel. Barnes was sued by 4 women, and the lawsuits made me anxious. Going to court was a huge risk that could derail everything. 6 weeks after returning from Singapore, my doorbell rang. It was Rachel. "What do you want?" I asked coldly. "Can we talk, Ethan?" "No," I said bluntly. "I don't want anything to do with you." She begged, so I let her in, but made her leave her phone in the car. I turned on my own recorder. She sat awkwardly on the edge of the couch. "I know you did this, Ethan. You've created this nightmare." I stared at her without a word. "Stop it, Ethan," she pleaded. "My father doesn't deserve this. These are lies, and you know it." I laughed. "It's out of my hands now. It's up to the courts. Please, Ethan. I know you can stop this," she said, her voice trembling. "Now that your world is falling apart, you want my help? Where were you when your father was with my wife?" I asked, my voice low. Her face reddened, but she stayed silent. "Oh, that's right. You were helping, making sure she'd fall in line for your father's pleasure." Her eyes filled with tears. "When will you be satisfied?" she whispered. "Not until your family is completely destroyed," I replied. She shuddered at my words. "There will be no ceasefire, no peace. This isn't a game, Rachel." She stood, visibly shaken. "You want revenge on me? How?" I stared her down as she ran out to her BMW, barely holding it together. I watched her drive off, feeling both satisfaction and disgust at my cruelty. Though it was still early, I craved a drink. The rest of the week passed in a blur of legal meetings and work on new clients. Michael and I were reviewing listings on the Hong Kong and Johannesburg exchanges, keeping our momentum going despite everything. The 4-woman class action lawsuit against Barnes was picking up steam. The Barnes, led by Rachel, were trying to settle out of court. Meanwhile, the DA's office struggled to prosecute a man who was near death. Still, we waited. Barnes's assets were nearly gone, and the women received over $2 million each. This marked the end of MRE, but I needed one more thing to complete my revenge. I went to the hospital, entering Barnes's room like I belonged there. No one stopped me. I wanted him to know who had destroyed his legacy. He lived for 2 more days after that. Rachel had him cremated. Only 5 people attended the small service, including Anna. She wanted to take Liam and Sophia with her afterward, but I stopped her. "I'd see you dead first," I told her coldly. "You would, wouldn't you?" she said, her voice filled with fear and hate, similar to Rachel's last look. "You ruined him, didn't you? Just because he and I had a relationship? You went crazy and destroyed so many lives," she cried. I laughed harshly. "You planted the seeds, Anna. Why didn't you just tell me you wanted someone else?" "We could have divorced," I said, staring at Anna. She looked down, her voice barely a whisper. "I love Tony. He gave me what I needed. With you, I always felt like your job came first. After we had Liam and Sophia, I felt even more neglected. I could have left, but I didn't." I played the recording on my phone, where Barnes wheezed through his words. "Was it worth it?" I asked him. "No," Barnes gasped. "You ruined everything I built. It's your fault, Barnes. You destroyed yourself." "How did you know about me using them?" he asked, his voice weak. I laughed. "I didn't. I thought I was making it up, but now I see why those women came after you." It all crumbled with one little crack. Barnes, struggling to sit up, spat, "Screw you, Walker. Those women owed me." Anna collapsed to the floor, and I walked away, leaving her behind. When MRE sold assets, I bought the New Horizons house for next to nothing. I announced plans to turn it into a shelter for abused women, renaming it the Grace Walker House after my mother. It was placed in a trust with my dad and the 4 women who had sued Barnes as trustees. They contributed to the project, and the media praised us. During the divorce, Anna got primary custody, and I paid alimony until Liam and Sophia turned 18. She stayed in the house but had to contribute 50% to the mortgage. Alimony for her was 0. When she accused me of hiding money, I threatened her, and she backed down. Eventually, we divorced, and I bought a 3-bedroom condo where the kids stayed with me on weekends. Life moved forward, though I missed the kids when I traveled. Things were tough, but manageable. Anna's relationship with Rachel ended immediately after I showed her the recording of Barnes's confession. I circulated an edited version, and it took on a life of its own. Rachel left town a few months later, and I never heard from her again. I met Jasmine, whose real name was Emily Carter, in Chicago. She had cleaned up and was doing well in her job. "Did you know about the abuse?" I asked. "It was like an open secret," she said, "but no one ever admitted to it. They were all too scared of being kicked out. Why didn't you tell me?" She laughed. "I wasn't one of the victims, Ethan. I just got a few women to come forward. Maria Lopez, the second woman I contacted, was the one who broke down and called the radio station, sparking the Me Too movement. Jasmine could have made money, but by the time Barnes was sued, she had already started over in Chicago. You gave me a good start, Ethan. Thank you." My revenge was complete. The Barnes were destroyed, like a character in a tragic saga. Financially, things were looking up. The business was thriving, and Michael talked about selling me his share so he could retire. Liam and Sophia adjusted well to life, focusing on school and sports. For years after the divorce, Anna married an older man. Liam and Sophia said he was a nice guy. I remained single, probably due to lingering trust issues. At my father's urging, I started seeing a trauma counselor. Life was improving, but I knew I still had a long way to go.